Hey crew, it's Pitt, and I am back with the news. We're starting something new today. I haven't done this since I started the channel. Once my voice went out, I stopped doing this, but now I feel like it is time to start doing this again, so I'm going to begin today with doing a news roundup. We are going to read the news. We're going to try not to get too controversial. This will be the center right view on the news because I am not on the left, but I am not on the extreme right either. We're going to talk about things with a reasonable tone, and I hope. With that being said, let's dive into the first headline. This is the Fed to cut rates twice this year, starting in September. But one or none still a risk. Routers, readers, poll finds. This is by Indra Dipghosh, and the link will be provided down below so you can find this at Readers. The U.S. Federal Reserve will cut its key interest rates in September and once more this year, according to a majority of forecasters in a Reader's poll that showed a significant risk. They opt for only one or none at all. Economists in Reader's surveys over the past few months have remained consistent in predicting two cuts, unlike markets which until last week were pricing in one in November before flopping back to two. The shift in Fed funds futures bets was partly because of official data showed in the U.S. economy expanded at a slower pace last quarter than estimated earlier, even as key inflation measures remain sticky. Over the past few months, Fed officials have made clear they are in no hurry to cut the policy rate. And some economists think that the Fed's latest quarterly dot plot projection due this month would show two or fewer rate cuts this year, down from a very close call of three in March. Still, nearly two-thirds of economists, 74 out of 116, in the May 31st through June 5th poll predicted the first cut in the Fed funds rate to a 5% to a 5.25% range would come in September. It's the same conclusion as last month's poll with a similar majority. And that is where I'm going to stop for a minute. We're going to talk about it for a minute because I have some misgivings about this. If you don't understand how inflation works, this is it in general. The value of a thing goes down the more that you have. We printed a whole lot of money during the emergency of the past couple of years. Whether or not that was necessarily a thing that we needed to do, it happened. And therefore, the value of our holdings went down. That is why it takes more to buy things at the store. The inflation rate is significantly higher than what has been reported in my estimation because when I go to the store, I pay a lot more than 9% more for my groceries. The price of things has risen. Inflation is the way that we fight back against that. It is taking away from the supply in a measurable manner. It costs more to borrow money so that you're paying more back into the system so they can retract that currency from the system and increase the value of the dollar. There is so much out there that any decrease of our inflationary rates is not going to affect us in a positive manner. I think that this date being announced in this article, not attributing this to the writer, but to the people who are giving him the information, is merely to interfere with the election. This is talking about, yeah, in September, we're going to take care of you. And I think that it would be foolish to do so. I know that it is tight out there. I am feeling the effects of it being tight out there. But if we do it, if we do indeed cut the interest rates, this is going to make it a little bit tighter because the value of the dollar has not come down enough, right? Or has not gone up enough because we have retracted enough from circulation. We need it to be harder to borrow money in the short term so that we can be all right in the long term. That is the point of raising the rates. Now, we're not going to get into the argument about whether or not the Fed has the ability. They do have the ability. But is it constitutional? That's the debatable part. We're not going to get into that, right? We're talking about specifically what our current situation is. If they do retract the rates, it will probably affect us. People will be happy about it until they realize that they should not have been happy about it, but that is politics. I think that September is a reason that's awfully close to when we're going to be voting, right? It will be far enough away from the decision that people are like, oh, it wasn't just for the election. And then it won't be far enough down the road so that they will actually feel the repercussions of that until after the election has taken place. I believe that the willfully ignorant will find a lot in this to be excited about, and I don't know that I think it is a good thing. We're going to jump to the next headline now because why not? U.S. private payrolls rise less expectedly in May. This is by Reuters, updated today. U.S. private payrolls increased less than expected in May, while data for the prior month was revised lower, a report showed on Wednesday. Private payrolls increased by 152,000 jobs last month after rising by a downwardly revised 188,000 in April, the ADP employment report showed. Economists polled by Reuters had forecast private employment increasing by 175,000 last month. The report was the latest indication that employment is not buckling under the weight of a 525 basis points of interest rate increases from the Federal Reserve since March 2022, although other data has shown the job market is coming into better balance. On Tuesday, the Labor Department reported job openings fell in April to the fewest in more than 3 years, and the ratio of vacancies to the number of unemployed persons had returned to levels seen prior to the COVID-19 pandemic outbreak in early 2020. The ADP report, jointly developed by the Stanford Digital Economy Lab, also precedes Friday's more comprehensive and closely watched non-farm payrolls report for May from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Economists polled by Reuters expect the BLS data to show 170,000 private sector jobs were created last month, little change from April's 167, while total payroll growth is estimated at 185,000 versus 175,000 in April. The unemployment rate is forecast unchanged at 3.9 and the annual wage increases, holding steady at 3.9, which is not keeping up with the rate of inflation. We just saw that the base rate of inflation is 525 basis points. That means that everything is at least 5.25% interest. We just talked about why that is and why that is actually a good thing, even though it hurts you in your pocketbook and it makes you hold off on your dreams and desires for just a minute. And this article reinforces that. This article is also available from Reuters, and the link will be provided down below. And you can read for yourself. We actually got through this whole one because it was rather short. But this is telling you in no uncertain terms why. There was not nearly enough jobs created to keep up with population growth, much less the fact that we now have an entire class of graduating seniors about to enter the job market across the entirety of the United States. Now, yes, true, about a third of them will go off to college, but 2/3 of them will probably go directly into the workforce, and we do not have nearly enough job growth to compensate for that. And yet we are still bringing people across the border. We'll talk about that in a minute. We have a problem, and our problem is us here. Our wages are not increasing, but that's because people cannot afford it. If you think that your prices have gone up when you go to the grocery store, like we just talked about in the last segment, that is the same true for the businesses. Their prices have gone up. It has cost them more to do the things that they need to do, to order the supplies that they need to do to keep up with the payroll. Most people who work for someone else do not realize how much money goes into being an employer. For every employee, you pay their base rate of pay times 2 at least. You're paying them, you're paying unemployment insurance, you're paying health benefits, you're paying all kinds of extraneous costs for the benefit of your employee. You actually wind up paying in total your employees more than yourself most time, and most people don't understand that. If you increase the base rate of pay from $10 to make it even to $20, you're changing the employer's cost from $20 to $40. That is a thing. Every time you raise the price that you are paying someone, it is going to cost the employer more than you were thinking about. On the flip side of that, as long as you have to have a law that says this is the least amount that you can pay a human being to work, it will never be enough. You should never be on minimum wage longer than it takes to find another job that pays more than minimum wage. I never had a minimum wage job other than delivering pizzas while I was still in high school. It is possible to get a higher paying job a lot faster than you think if you're willing to do hard work and gain a little bit of knowledge. The trades are hurting and you can find a good paying job with good benefits outside of the things that they are trying to track and convince you that are going well. From there, let's go ahead and talk about Biden on the border because this is a real thing too. Biden imposes sweeping asylum ban at the U.S. Mexico border by Todd Hessin and Micah Rosenberg for Reuters. Washington. The U.S. President Joe Biden on Tuesday instituted a broad asylum ban on migrants caught illegally crossing the U.S. Mexico border, a major enforcement move in the run up to the November elections that will decide control of the White House. Migrants caught crossing illegally could be quickly deported or turned back to Mexico under the measure, which will take effect just after midnight. There will be exceptions for unaccompanied children, people who face serious medical or safety threats, and victims of trafficking, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security said. Biden, a Democrat, has toughened his approach to border security as immigration has emerged as a top issue for Americans in the run-up to the November 5th elections, where he will face Republican Donald Trump, who made a hard-line stance on immigration a centerpiece of his administration and vowed a wide-ranging crackdown if re-elected. Biden took office in 2021, vowing to reverse some of Trump's restrictive immigration policies, but grappled with record levels of migrants caught crossing illegally, a trend that has strained U.S. border authorities and cities receiving new arrivals. The rest of the article will be linked down below for you to go back and check out on Reuters, but it is not a coincidence that we are leading into the election, and this is the headline because they have to act like they're going to do something anyway, right? People are very much upset with them with very good reason. If you can't find a job, it is probably because the job market is saturated with people who are not supposed to be here. It is again a failure on our part to hold our elected representatives responsible as we are supposed to do inside of our republic. We are supposed to take the initiative to ensure that they are doing what we tell them to do, and we don't do that. This is where I'm going to get a little bit political. I'm center right, but I can't vote for the left at all, right? There's no way I can do the things. I'm going to vote for the man who is going to secure the border. I'm going to vote for the man who is going to give us a secure enough base that we can lower interest rates in a positive manner so that it actually affects us. During the time that President Trump was in office, we will take it up to the start of the hysteria, we had the best years of our lives. I knew people who were buying four-wheelers and boats. Now I know people who are selling four-wheelers and boats. The economy was doing great. We were putting on jobs. The border was shut down and we had vacancies to fill. It's an amazing coincidence. I can't directly correlate it, but I can indirectly correlate it. If you are importing people to replace your workers. Now, I am not talking about replacing citizens. This is not some great replacement theory. I'm in pro-immigration. I think anybody who wants to come here legally, cross the border in the proper manner, using the proper credentials and the proper process, you are more than welcome to join. I want to naturalize as many citizens as possible. I am not opposed to expanding the federation of our republic to more places. But that is dependent upon our Constitution being the Constitution and it being an overwhelming majority of the place and not us imposing our will. I don't want us to go in there and overtake somebody. I want places that are poor to be like, hey, can we be Americans? And be like, hell yeah. That's what I want. Now, I don't care what your shade is. I don't care what language you speak. I think we should speak English because it is the commonly accepted one, but I don't really care. And so, center. And so, that's where I stand on it. Legal process, no problem. Illegal process, I think that there should be some much harsher penalties than there are. I think that if you are attempting to cross our borders, that is a hostile act taken by hostile forces of a hostile nation. And it should be treated as such. I think we should bring our boys home from policing the borders or the borders of other places and put them on the borders of our own and give them live ammunition. You are more than welcome to come through the gates of entry. You are not welcome to cross any other place. That's where I'm standing on. And that's going to bring us into our only, well, we got one more local interest. The Proud Boys are back. How far right groups is rebuilding to rally behind Trump. Why did that just... Okay. This is by Adam Roston for Routers. The link will be provided down below. This story contains offensive language. I will try to skip it. This is a dark SUV cruised past former President Donald Trump supporters near his Bedminster Golf Club in New Jersey on a Wednesday, April afternoon. Billowing from the vehicle were 3 flags. One for the Trump campaign, 2 others with the initials PB, the insignia of the far-right Proud Boys movement. Through the open windows, 3 Proud Boys flashed the OK sign with their hands, a gesture often associated with white supremacy in the far right. Trump's fans cheered. 4 men dressed in the signature black and yellow shirts of the Proud Boys spilled out of the SUV and began glad-handing the crowd like homecoming heroes. The Proud Boys are back. 4 years after the failed effort to overturn Trump's 2020 electoral defeat, the violent all-male extremist group that led the storming of Congress on January the 6th, 2021, is rebuilding and regaining strength as Trump's campaigns to return to the White House, according to interviews with 8 Proud Boys, 2 U.S. law enforcement officials, and 4 experts who tracked the group's online activity. And that is where I'm going to leave this dribble, and we're going to talk about it for a minute, because this is obviously a biased, should be labeled opinion piece. I don't agree with the tactics necessarily of the Proud Boys. They're a little bit more aggressive than I am, but I think that we stand pretty much for the same things. They are, as far as I know, right? I don't know anybody who is actually in there other than Playboy the Beast that I cover in my reaction videos. He's the only one I know anything about personally, and that's not even personal because I don't know the dude. I've never talked to the dude. I react to his music, and that is as close as I personally am. But from what I understand from them, from what they say about themselves, they're just people who are concerned, right? And they think that it's their call to action to be a little bit more assertive than I would be. I am nonviolent. I think violence should be our last recourse. They think that it is an aggressive defense. I'm not going to get into that. They are smeared in large part. Are there bad elements? Yeah, probably so. What happened on that particular day in January? I'm not a fan of the way that most things went down there. That is on both sides of things, right? Somebody asked for an enhanced military presence and was denied by others. That is a real thing you should look into yourself if you were unaware of. The violent actors are absolutely abhorrent. We are not violent actors. Anybody who is caught committing violent actions should be held to the fullest extent of the law. But most of the people who were there that day were there to peacefully voice their protest. Most of the people who walked into the buildings did not know that they were breaking the law, and yet several of them are still being held without bail, bond, or trial. That is a severe problem for our republic. That is a major flaw in our judicial system. That is to never say that it is okay to get violent except in the last extremity. I don't believe we are at the last extremity, but we are well along in the list of usurpations that are coming from the government. And in the redress of such, we are not being heard. We are being vilified. I don't agree with The Proud Boys. I'm not part of an organization. I pledged to the United States Navy once, and I still hold that pledge, and I pledge to the United States people regularly, and I hold to that pledge. But I don't pledge to any groups. I don't pledge to do things. I'm not being held into a chain of command. I am nonviolent. But I don't condemn people for thinking that their way of life is under attack, because it is. Communism is definitely trying to attack our country. It is trying to dissolve our republic, and that is something that we are going to be showing in this series. Right? This news coverage series here, because the vilification of American citizens for expressing themselves is a terrible thing, even if you do not agree with their particular beliefs. There are several groups that hold beliefs that I do not agree with that I believe you should listen to. You should hear what they have to say. Patriot Nation. Patrick Bet-David has recently done a podcast where he talked in an interview with the leader of the Patriot Front. That's what they were called, right? And I thought they were feds. They might be. I don't know. The guy's like, no, we're not. Okay. They are definitely racist as hell. I'm not associated with them at all. I don't care to have any association with anybody who is making decisions based upon melanin. I believe that that is extremely foolish. That is not the Proud Boys. The Proud Boys are multicultural. They are not the white nationalist group at all. They are several different ethnicities, probably every single one that you can imagine in various locations around the country. They are a widely disorganized organization, right? They are not necessarily super structured in the way that the military is or other things of that nature. They are local groups concerned about their local issues and their national issues because they love their nation. Well, I love my nation too. I am a nationalist. I love the United States of America. I did all 85 Federalist Papers. I read the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and all the amendments out loud because I'm energetically investing into my country. I think that we are all better when we rise together, when we come together and do the things that are right together. And now we're going to wrap it up with just a little bit of some international news. Israel steps up the military offensive in Gaza as the U.S. presses for a ceasefire. This was updated 42 minutes ago as of June the 5th. Cairo. Where's the byline? Where's the guy who wrote it? Nidal al-Maghrabi. I'm sorry if I butcher your name. I am attempting to do it the best that I can. Cairo. Israel announced a new military campaign against Hamas in central Gaza on Wednesday, as Palestinian medics said airstrikes there had killed dozens of people ahead of talks between the U.S. and Qatari mediators to try to finalize a ceasefire deal. The armed wings of Hamas and Islamic Jihad said they had fought gun battles with Israeli forces in areas throughout the enclave and fired anti-tank rockets and shells as the two sides sought the upper hand amid pressure to lay down their arms. At least 44 Palestinians have been killed in Israeli military strikes in central Gaza Strip since Tuesday, health officials in the enclave said. And now we're going to jump into another headline. We're going to talk about all three of these in the wrap-up. Israel and the United States await Hamas's response on the proposed Gaza ceasefire deal. This is June the 2nd. I'm assuming that we received it, but the conditions that are outlined in here, we're not going to read it. This is from the Jerusalem Post by two routers by Tova Lazarov. The gist of this deal is Israel is willing to deal as long as two conditions are met. We want our hostages back, and Hamas has to cease as an organization. Now, let's go to the third headline. This is from today. Hamas signals post-war ambition in talks with Palestinian rival Fatah by Ali Safwata, and Nidal al-Maghrabi. Sorry, I'm trying, y'all. All three of these links will be provided down below so that you can go back and read them in their entirety, as all of the links provided will do the same thing. Deep divisions will limit progress at reconciliation talks between Palestinian factions, Hamas and Fatah this month. Conversations with 5 sources in the groups indicate, but the meetings highlight that the Islamist group is likely to retain influence after Israel's war in Gaza. The talks between Hamas and the Fatah party of the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas will be held in China in mid-June, according to officials from both sides. They follow 2 recent rounds of reconciliation talks, one in China and one in Russia. China's foreign ministry declined to comment. The next meeting will be held amid attempts by international mediators to reach a ceasefire deal for Gaza, with one of the key sticking points being the day after plan, or how the enclave will be governed. Considered a terrorist organization by many Western nations, Hamas was shunned long before its October 7th attacks killed 1,200 people in Israel, with more than 250 hostages taken, triggering a war in Gaza. But even as it is pummeled militarily, the meetings of Hamas politicians with officials from the Fatah party that controls Palestinian politics in the Israeli-occupied West Bank point to the group's aim of shaping the post-war order in the Palestinian territories, according to a source familiar with conversations within Hamas. That person, like other unnamed officials in the story, declined to be named because they weren't authorized to discuss sensitive matters with the media. Hamas, which ruled Gaza before the war, recognizes it cannot be part of any internationally recognized new government of the Palestinian territories when fighting the enclave eventually ends. Nonetheless, it wants Fatah to agree to a new technocratic administration for the West Bank and Gaza as part of a wider political deal. We are speaking about political partnership and political unity to restructure the Palestinian entity. Naim, who attended the previous rounds of China talks, said in an interview, "Whether Hamas is in the government or outside of it, that is not a prime demand of the movement, and it doesn't see it as a condition for any reconciliation." He said Naim, much like Hamas's political leadership, operates in exile outside of Gaza. The prospect of Hamas surviving as an influential political player is a thorny issue for Western states. Despite Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's Gaza war goal of destroying the Iran-backed group, most observers agree Hamas will exist in some form after a ceasefire. An offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood, the movement has deep reach and ideological roots in Palestinian society. And that's where we're going to wrap this one up, because the point of this is that Israel and Hamas are continuing a war that is a very, very old war. If you're unaware of how old this war is, I have a Bible study that will outline that for you. Not everybody will like what I have to say, but I read the book in the way that I read the news. And so what we have here is Israel has some very reasonable demands. Their very reasonable demands is that this organization, whose stated cause, like the number one stated cause, is the eradication of them, not be in charge. Not only not be in charge, but not be a thing. If you're a terrorist organization and your goal is to destroy someone else completely, you should not be a thing. If you are oppressing your own people by just taking away the infrastructure to use to make weapons of war against the people who retreated away from you several times, you should not be in charge. I'm a big one for personal responsibility. I don't think that we should be involved in either side of this particular conflict. I think that people will do what people are going to do, and that is not our nation's. We should not be involved in it whatsoever. But it is not up to me, and we are involved in it. And if we are going to be involved in it, then we need to be on the side of the non-instigators. Now, some people believe that the entire occupation of the land is a problem, and I am not one of them. I have gone through in the Bible study and shown that by the rule of conquest, conquest has happened. And so, let it be. The area of Gaza was never controlled by the Israelis. Ever. That has always been territorially the land of the giants. But that's a whole thing in the Bible study. This is a war much older than you think it is. And so It is going to play out the way that it needs to play out. I don't need to extrapolate on it any farther than I have done in the Bible study. And this land will be in contention until it is not. It is not within my realm of capability to get my hands on it. But if we have to support one side, it's going to be against against the instigators, right? The non-aggression treaty, the non-aggression pact. I believe that Israel has a right to exist. It was decided by international courts that that would be the place where they exist, so therefore it is. And now that it is, they have the right to defend themselves in the way that they should. If a terrorist organization came into our place and did the things that were done on that date in October, we would be doing the same things. Now, I think that we could handle it in a different manner. I'm for door to door, declare or don't. Right? You go in and you say, okay, are you part of Hamas? And they say no. You go stand in this row. Are you a part of Hamas? Yes, you go stand in this row. There should be an international court to decide what to do with you. But it's time of war. They have declared war upon Israel. You don't get to pick a fight and then say, oh no, I'm done. That's not how it works. You pick a fight with me, I'm going to tell you when you're done. That's how that's going to work. So that's where we're going to wrap this one up. Hopefully you enjoyed this. If you did, let me know down below. Hit me with a comment. Give me a like, share, and a sub. Let me know with a super thanks. That would be very much appreciated. This is something that we're going to be doing. I'm going to try and keep it center as much as possible, but I am center right. I want to be very clear about that. I am not a neutral arbiter. I believe in America. I believe in freedom. I believe in the justice system. I don't believe any of that is working the way that it was intended. I have whole playlists dedicated to that. Hopefully I brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion to a little bit of some difficult topics. All of the links are always going to be provided down below so that you can go back, get the whole story, make sure that I am not taking things out of context, make sure that I actually understand what I'm talking about. If you do not believe that I know what I'm talking about, let's talk about it down below. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. God loves you. You are perfect, whole, and complete just the way that you are. And this has been Pitt's Take. Peace.